So welcome once again. Tonight we're going to be talking about progressive ancient technology. This is, we have the technology that we do have because of all the things we've been through, but we've been through a number of setbacks as a species on this planet. And imagine how much farther along our technology would be had we not received those setbacks. So that's what we'll talk about. And there's no speculation, there's no new math, there's no new physics agenda here. It's just, look at this. Isn't that thought provoking? Regarding technological progression over time, how we've advanced, and we have to realize that that's the ad hoc way of advancing. We do it mostly for money, and sometimes we have false starts. But is it speculation? Yes, absolutely. Is it correct? Don't really know, and this is just speculation. Until you sit back and think about it, you don't realize the level of sophisticated technology that we just consider normal and take for granted. Even if you don't fully comprehend it, you might have heard of it. Ion propulsion for spacecraft, for deep spacecraft, and for satellites. Mobile phone, pick your NG. The latest is 5G, but they're already working on 6G and 7G in like the companies. Wireless networking outside the mobile phone service, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth with various things, including your car, computers that are supercomputer mainframes, desktops, tablets, mobiles, they're all increasing in capabilities. The advent of quantum computers. I saw that IBM has realized that they'll never be able to make a single quantum computer with more than a couple of hundred qubits anytime soon. So what they're doing is they're creating ganged up quantum computers. So instead of having just one quantum computer with 160 qubits, they've got 4, 6, and 8 quantum computers with 160 qubit modules in it. And they all talk to each other. But the speed within the quantum computer is so much faster than the speed of talking amongst themselves that it's questionable as to what level of advancement they're going to get from it. Then we have artificial general intelligence and artificial intelligence assisted driving. And I saw where Mercedes-Benz has filed with the US government to have their automated driving system available to use on non-geofenced areas. And then you read the caveats, and no speed higher than 45 miles an hour. Like that's not going to get you on the turnpike. But we have pluses and minuses in the advances of our technology. We have multiple stage liquid fuel rockets with single stage and side boosters on those rockets to have them oomph more into the sky. We have jet engines and military aircraft with afterburners. I don't know if you've heard of this, but there's a thing called Super Cruise, which is a jet engine that is so efficient, they never have to have afterburners in order to achieve at least Mach 1. So you'll find those as Super Cruise, not to be confused with Super Cruise without the space between the two words, which is a particular automaker's AI-assisted driving. And even jet aircraft themselves, you have regular jets, ram jets, and scram jets, and it's all just burning fuel to make the aircraft go faster. Of course, we have our traditional propeller-driven aircraft, and we have turboprops that are a mix of jet and propeller. And then we have the futures of hydrogen-powered aircraft, and eventually when we get the battery energy density up, we'll have electric aircraft. There are already some of the small regional prop plane commercial aviation companies that are trialing electric aircraft. Individually, we have motorized vehicles that are bicycles, scooters, motorcycles, cars, trucks, and even trains. General Electric got into real electric trains with no diesel. Other kinds of aircraft, we have gliders, unpowered gliders. We have multiple types of those. We have parachutes with propellers, the paragliders. We progressed electricity, chemistry, particle physics, nuclear energy, and now we're in quantum territory. Just printing, just communicating via physically printed things. We went from linotype and offset presses to laser to inkjet, where in your home, you can print at the same quality that Gutenberg wished he had. We have lighter than air balloons, and we found ways to pressurize the balloons so that we can make them go even higher and last longer. Just simple sailing ships. If you look at the original single sail Polynesian style ships that sail between major islands in the Pacific Ocean, and now we've got, not just ships with more and bigger sails, we've got ships with computerized sails that will adjust the angle of air and the size of the sail dynamically based upon setting the maximum speed. Roadways, we have started out with dirt roads and then stone roads and brick roads and then cement roads and high-tech asphalt roads that are just porous enough to let water through. Various kinds of bridges that we've designed through our engineering talents, and tunnels that we can take through either mountains and rock or tunnels underwater. We started out with simple wheeled carts and wagons, and then we went on to attach horses and other beasts to them, and now they're motorized, and now we call them vehicles. So all of this is stuff that has been created one layer on top of another in human technology for not that many years, about 400 years. So given time, we advanced our technology. We did this because this is who we are. We're strongly influenced by what if. If we find a problem, we think of a solution and say, what if we did this? Sometimes we just look at it as revenue opportunities. If we did that, how much more money could we make? Could we save money on building products by having them automate the building of them? All these things are just happenstance. They're just, there's no long-term overarching agenda for it. It's just kind of we stumbled into it based upon need. But even if we develop a technology, we don't really take it outside of its original arena. We don't repurpose it for other things. All this means is we don't know where we're going to wind up. It's just we progress whenever we need to. And most of these achievements have been in the last 700 years. That's from the time of Leonardo da Vinci to today, from about the year 1400. Now, there are things that were developed before 1400, but they were small incremental things. They weren't progressive movement towards more and more capability. I mean, people talk about the Industrial Revolution, but that was just applying rotational power to the machines we had already developed that were, driven by other means, water wheels and such. But if we've done this, if the common sphere of social order on the planet did this, would it have been possible for this to have been accomplished sooner or maybe progressed further had we always been in a positive direction in an overarching goal of progress for the sake of progression as opposed to making money or solving problems? So if we align with mainstream archaeological evidence that says, go back about to 10,000 BC, that's kind of where sophisticated societies started to evolve. But there are other people that believe it's more likely about 12,000 BC as they start to uncover archaeologic dig sites and go, they were pretty sophisticated for back then. What's that carbon dating reading? 12,000 BC. Yeah, we didn't think that was possible back then, but apparently so. So it's not just 10,000 years, it's 12,000 years. But I would say adding another 2,000 years, if they were really progressive, it's just like icing on the cake. It's not really going to make or break things. So I had to pick a starting point, and I said, what is the earliest evidence that I can see of some kind of advanced technology that the locals were trying to explain, much like if you walked up to a person on the street and you said, pull out your cell phone and show it to me. And they show you their cell phone and you go, so do you know how that works? Yeah, it's running some apps, and that's about where it ends. They can't explain the technology that they carry on themselves. So 10,000 years ago plus, if you happen to see something flying overhead and it was bigger than a bird and it looked like a person and it actually had a voice that came down from the skies, how would you describe that? You know, what basis would you have for documenting that? Well, let's see. It's flying overhead. Birds fly. Birds use wings to fly. Therefore, this being must have had wings. Okay. Well, what I find curious is around the person, that sort of glowing orb shape. And we've recently heard about mysterious UAPs that are orbs. So maybe this was an explanation of an orb, but that was the only basis they had of explaining it is there was somebody speaking from it, so it must be a person up there, and had to have wings. I just want to know what's up with the hand ring. So this was a stone carving from Mesopotamia, a little bit later than the previous one. Ancient Sumerian. It kind of shows this thing, and below it you see this sort of triangular thing with a curved, looks like a shock wave below it. That was the closest thing I could find to somebody trying to explain chemical rocket propulsion. And you see the little like three figures that are sitting on top of it. It said that, you know, this thing that goes up in the sky that we can all point to has this stuff coming out the bottom of it that's kind of like flame, and there are people up there or beings up there. They don't know what they're documenting. They don't have any basis for documenting the observed technology, so they gave it a go, and this is what they got. Other people might say, is that a UFO? Well, as we go forward, post BC, we're now into AD, about 500 to 700 AD, you'll find a Mayan king Pakal, and this is a stone relief carving. And it shows him sitting somewhere, controlling some knobs and looking through something. And then below him is this thing that has what looks like flame shooting out the bottom of it. Now, this is always perfect evidence by the ancient aliens folks. And I don't know that he came from here or elsewhere. It doesn't really matter. What matters to me is this is far more advanced technology than the people that created this stone relief. So they had no clue what they were documenting, and they just did something as stylized art. But it is capturing a progressive moment in time where we're now down to an individual craft that flies around, and there's a person inside of it. And then we come up to, let's say, I don't know, the 1950s. So if technology progressed over a couple of thousand years and chemical propulsion became obsolete and they found other means of flying things around, then, you know, what comes to mind? Flying saucers, flying discs, whoever's piloting them, whether they be local or out-of-towners. A saucer shape is aerodynamic. You're less concerned with banking and turning. If there are any occupants on board, they're probably going to be tasked with flying it, running observational instruments. Maybe there's potentially tourists or passengers or dignitaries on board. If the vehicle landed somewhere, then the occupants could be responsible for doing on-site observations, managing cargo, making contact with the locals, executing negotiations. And this is a very highly magnified image, and I wasn't sure whether this would make it through the YouTube intellectual property scanners, but apparently I've got it confusing them at this point. This is not a UAP observation. This is from the 1950s sci-fi movie Earth versus the Flying Saucers.
Yeah, I recognize it.
Yeah. Harry, what was his name?
Ray Harryhausen.
Ray Harryhausen. I've forgotten his first name. Ray Harryhausen would love that. It's still in the media. It's still out there because he did such a good job on that particular movie. given the technology of the time. If he had CGI, oh, he could do really good CGI. And nowadays, or since the 1940s, we've had these things that we call Foo Fighters or orbs, spherical orbs. They're small. They're only 1 to 4 meters in diameter. They're less expensive to make. There's no people on board. They're autonomous flying drones, for want of a better term to describe them. Think about it for a moment. We have these hints that UFOs crashed or UFOs were shot down, and there were occupants on board. That's not good. But if it's an orb and there's no occupants on board that can do all the observing you need, and somebody happens to shoot it down, big deal. It's cheap enough, just go build another one.
Wait. You're saying it's an orb, but there's no one on board. Are you saying that you're not saying that because they couldn't be small or they shrunk themselves, but because of the speed they execute turns and that we presume that not? Well, why do we know no one's on the orb? Were you on the orb?
Nope. I'm saying it's an uncrewed, no people on board orb because that's what we do. Do we have quadcopters and drones that we send out to do filming and observing and recording? And there's nobody on board. Well, why do we use that? Why don't we just fly an airplane? Because drones are cheaper. If we're going to do it that way, why would we deny them the same thing? An orb that's, less than 4 meters across, that is uncrewed, is sophisticated enough to fly itself. That sounds like a thing we would do. It keeps the occupants away from the locals, which are militaristic. And if it crashes, fine, we'll just build another one. So I think that orbs are a thing. I don't know whether the locals make them or the out-of-towners make them. If it's the locals that make them, which country are the locals from? I can't answer those questions. I'm just describing it as, if we had the technology, would we be using them for aerial surveillance? Of course we would, because it's kind of like somebody saying, if you wanted to do graphical control of a computer, would you invent a mouse? Well, it's kind of a very convenient way of doing it. They've tried other sorts of things, gloves and rings and hand gestures, and mouse just kind of works. This is the same sort of thing. If you wanted to do remote surveillance and you didn't want to put a crew in danger and you wanted to build a cheap aircraft that if it got destroyed or shot down or had a malfunction, you could build another one pretty easily, quickly, and cheaply, an orb is the way to go. And by the way, I took this as a snip from the NASA UAP report, and it was actually part of the video from the director of Aramu. That's the latest incarnation of kind of a blue bookish government program. Aboard the ISS, dating back to 2017, there is a small flying orb on board the ISS. It's used for documentation purposes. So while the science astronauts are on board doing things, this little orb can hover near it and take video and snapshots, and you can command it to do things. And because it's nil gravity, microgravity, it doesn't need a lot of thrusting. What it actually has is fans. It uses little tiny fans to push air in one direction or another to make it move. And it can rotate and it can fly, down the corridors of the ISS. And, this isn't the UAP orb, but it's just another point to show you that if we had the need and we had the technology, we would make an orb, because it's a very convenient shape. I just think that it's from Japan. It's from JAXA. The technical name is the Int-Ball, INT-ball, but the Japanese astronauts refer to it as the little ball of cuteness. But I don't think NASA's got a hold of it because there's no real acronym. It'd be LBOC, the Lubbock. So I went looking for what I would think of as hints at advanced technology. And what I found was there is a place in Peru where there's this T-shaped carving in the side of a mountain. The mountain has a flat face on it, and just carved right into the side of the mountain is Looks like a doorway. But all it is just a recessed area in the stone. And it's actually called by local dialogue as Stargate. And I thought, well, there's no technology there. It's just like an indent in the rock. If you had the ability to do opening of a portal from one point to another, you don't necessarily have to have the equipment at every portal, because you can, it's like third-party dialing on phones. I don't have to actually connect with the person to dial the other person. I can just relay the call. Well, if I can do the same thing with a port, with opening a portal, then I put the technology somewhere in the middle, and then I'll open a port here, and I'll open a port over here, and then you just walk across, and then when you're done, I close the port. So you wouldn't see any technology at either place. But the hint here is it needs to be in a fixed location. If you remember something I said months ago, if you travel in space at a high enough speed, you have to travel in time. If you travel in time, then you definitely have to travel in space. So if you made the spatial location anchored to the Earth and fixed, now you have that. So if you want a portal, give it a fixed location where you can always dial there, much like postal addresses. And what do we have for postal addresses? Well, we used to have this thing called a telephone book. Here's your telephone book. What better explanation for Göbekli Tepe in Turkey is than it's an airport terminal gate system. Notice how they're T-shaped, kind of like that doorway in the mountain. And we've yet to explain all the carvings on the stones. I'm thinking it's, instead of, well, these animals used to live in Turkey, but they haven't lived in Turkey for 10,000 years. I think it's more a matter of this pillar defines where the portal is located in India or Peru or wherever. So that's what you would dial up. So they have to have some symbol that says, here's how you dial up to Peru. So all these stone pillars are nothing more than basically an airport terminal that gives you the location of all the other doorways. And what's the next step after that? How about we take it one step forward? Now we can open a portal from anywhere to anywhere. You no longer need fixed structures at fixed locations. You don't need any machinery at the source or destination. It's elsewhere. This is actually from a UAP video. It shows this fuzzy-looking craft hovering, and then this square opens up with light inside of it, and then the vehicle moves up through the opening and disappears, and then the lights go off slowly, like closing a door. I think this is the next step. After you have your fixed portals, now you need movable portals. And then the next step is, now instead of you needing some kind of propulsion to push your way into the portal, you have the portal move around you. And there's been examples of this in modern science fiction where the person just stands there, the portal opens up and then just envelops them, and then the portal closes. Or the portal opens and then rises above them and then closes, and the person's just there. And I know people will say, that's just sci-fi. But remember, at one time there was this thing called the Star Trek communicator, and now we have mobile phones. So I'm not going to give you any assurances, and yes, I will agree that it's currently science fiction, but I look at this as a safer way to travel than those Star Trek matter transporters, because there's no Heisenberg uncertainty principle associated with this. Oh, and now it's not going to work. Oh, I was going to use animations in this, but I decided not to use the animations. So instead, I created GIF images to do this. And what it shows is, if they would let you show it, but they don't, no. An arrow is here. That's an object. And then it showed a slit opening up, and then the arrow moving through the slit, and then the slit closing. And then over here, when the other slit opens, this slit opens too, and the arrow disappears in one place and appears in another place. So if you had that technology of, I can open a portal from anywhere to anywhere, open here, move across the portal and I move here, there's no distance between the two portals, direct portal to portal. Well, if you have that capability, you would see some of the things we see on UAPs. They kind of just pop in from nowhere and pop out to nowhere. But that would also explain how you can go from here to 20 miles away, and you would think of that as hypersonic, but you saw and heard no sonic boom. And if there were people on board, they wouldn't need any inertial dampeners to keep from getting squished like, pits on the inside of a grape moving fast. So if you want to be able to say what the technology is showing you, this is what the technology is showing you. You don't need any hypersonic. You don't need any anti-sonic boom capability. You don't need inertial dampeners to prevent the crew from being squashed like grapes. You just open a port, travel through it, and at the same time you open it here, you open it there, and you just go from here to there, and you're done. Close the ports. And they've actually observed this. They saw a UAP. They were recording it on radar, and then it disappeared here, and it appeared 20 miles away almost immediately. And they said, wow, that's a lot faster than we can fly. Cut out the middleman. Don't fly there. Just go from here to here. Well, if you can open portals to anywhere, why even use vehicles? Put your equipment at a location and just open the portal as a viewport, and then point your camera out through the viewport, and you can move the hole around wherever you need to do your observing. So the day that we see that the orbs have disappeared and now there's a little black hole in the sky, and we don't know what it is, but the little black hole is moving around. We've seen glowing things moving around like that, but not black holes. But if you want to get clever, all you do is you open the portal, and behind you is sky that looks just like the local sky. So you don't do observing at night by opening a portal from the daytime on another place on the planet. You go from dark to dark, and now you can't even see the portal. Now, we're building unmanned aircraft because they're smaller, cheaper, no need for all the stuff to keep a crew alive, and they're far more maneuverable because they have a shorter distance. They can do what is known as a snap roll. When you have a shorter distance, you have a localized center of gravity, so you can basically flip the plane very quickly or bank it very quickly. But even faster than that is one you don't have to rotate, and that's just an orb. But even faster than that is just move the portal, close it, move it somewhere else.
Now, I think I heard you, there has been some place that showed that there was a portal, or indicated that there was a portal. So is that the assumption that they do exist today?
That's my assumption. The
Okay.
evidence we have is the U.S. Navy recorded a UAP over the Pacific in the middle of military exercises. They saw this Tic Tac flying around, and the Tic Tac was over here around where the aircraft are, and then all of a sudden the Tic Tac was 20 miles away and not.
And that was just recent? That was recent?
2017. I guess
Okay,
you could call
so
that recent, within the last
yeah.
5 or 6 years. Yeah. Our explanation for that, meaning U.S. government military, our explanation was hypersonic travel. And how did they suppress the sonic boom if they were going hypersonic? And my answer is portals, because with portals, you can be here, then there, with no time in between, no sonic boom, no, massive acceleration, gravity shifts or whatever. It's just a much simpler approach to doing it. But
And you're saying portals are, they can only be for short distances apart.
No, I'm just saying the only UAP evidence we have so far for what I would explain with a portal is about 20 miles. But there's nothing that says it's limited to 20 miles. It could be from here to in orbit. And then you have to ask, what about the pressure differential between the two places? Open in an airlock on board a much bigger spaceship. Problem solved. It's kind of like those early carvings that I was showing you where the person that is logging the observation has no clue about the technology, so they describe it in terms they understand. Our current military would say, if it was here and now it's way over there, it must have flown to get there. And therefore it had to be traveling at incredible speeds to get there. And no, explain it differently. Just say, open a portal, pop across, close the portal, done. No hypersonic needed, no sonic booms needed. Problem solved. So you've got to look at these things from not just the technology you know are comfy at night with and understand. You've got to look at it as, what if they progressed further than us? What if they didn't have the stumbling blocks we do? What if they, were allowed to progress further? What could they have done? And these are the kind of things that I think they could have done. Remember, it only took us a little less than 10 years to go from we couldn't even orbit anything in the US. Sputnik was the only thing up there. And then within 10 years, we had boots on the ground on the moon. And that was because we had a political will to do it and to spend the money to do it and to advance the technology using whatever science we needed, including some guys we brought over from Germany, which were former enemies. So if we had a general approach to advancing technology simply for the sake of advancing technology to a new plateau, a new paradigm shift, where would we have been had we had 10 to 12,000 years of doing this? If you've got portal technology, you don't need faster than light travel and you don't experience any time dilation. Solves the problem. And some links. Okay, so too far-fetched, huh?
No, actually, it was
I
pretty
suppose
good.
I suppose that if you handed a cell phone to a caveman, he would use it as a hammer. Today, on this earth, are there places that the people that live there are living just fine? I won't say happy lives, but are living, reasonably sociable lives, and they have no cell phones. They have no advanced technology.
Yeah, it's fine. Sure, they might be happier.
Now, are we deliberately denying them the technology, or just we see no financial gain and we see only sociological disruption if we brought that advancement into their lives? So is there any place on the earth that could have people that did advance and have advanced over 10, 12,000 years? There are pockets of technology on this planet. Not all of those pockets are accessible to everyone on the planet. They're not common. There are advanced military scientific research facilities that not everybody can go to. I was thinking more of some of the DARPA facilities where they're working with certain materials science, certain chemistry that the general population is completely unaware of, and it would just blow their mind. Some of the stuff that involves metamaterials, where we're working at materials where we're manipulating atoms, or we're controlling etching on the surface of things down to sub 10 nanometer scale. That's just not general stuff. There's a pocket of technologists that are fully familiar with it and are deploying it, actively deploying it, but the rest of the planet is completely oblivious to it. And if somebody else on the planet was handed that technology and said, look at what we did, they wouldn't know what to do with it or how to describe it.
Use it as a hammer. Yeah.
I don't know.
One thing, though, that you're indicating, you indicated, or when I was discussing it with you, we were talking like it would be from another foreign, some from outer space, portal, people coming down here and creating a portal. But you're saying that we could actually have developed the technology, a country could have, or even our country, and just kept it under wraps, that they have these portals.
Yes, I'm leaving open the possibility that it's a group of locals that are far more advanced than our current technology, or it's guys from out of town that are visiting. Either way works. Either way develops the same technology. So, yeah, it's the right thing to do. It's a huge paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And not everybody has to be converted on day one, but it's if you were going to progress the technology of this society, that's what you would want to do. You would want to create infinite power because we've kind of already created the infinite computational capability because we have very high performance, high capacity computers that fit in the palm of your hand and they don't cost millions of dollars. So we've solved the computational capability. We need to solve the power.
Yes. That's the next hurdle.
Yeah.
Especially to save the planet.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yes. Okay.
there are more things in heaven and earth than I've thought of in your philosophies, Horatio. No, we don't have that. Never heard of it. Doesn't exist. Not possible.
Yeah.
Right. Or to quote Luke, no, that's not possible.
Yes.
I was just going to say, I think we're at the end of our run for tonight.
Anybody, any comment?
Does anybody have any comments for which they would like for me to stop recording first? Okay, I will stop sharing.